Hello and welcome to Breaking the Guard. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the UFC Fight Night that just passed, UFC Vegas 98. But in particular, there's one motif that I'm going to focus on, which is strategy, right? Now, I'm going to start with the main event. And again, spoilers, so if you haven't watched it and you want to watch it, tune in later. Otherwise, the main event was Brandon Royval versus Tatsuro Taira. This was a highly anticipated fight between two of the top contenders in that division. You have the number one in Royval, who recently fought for the title, and then Tatsuro Taira, who is 16-0, big prospect from Japan, that they were looking to see if they could build. I'm sure the UFC really wanted him to win just so they can capture another demographic, which makes sense. This was an interesting style matchup. Although both of them are known as grapplers, like they have good ground skills, I believe Tatsuya was at least a couple levels above Brandon. Or I would say Brandon's more of like an MMA grappler. Taira looks solid as a grappler, even just doing a pure grappling competition, right? That said, I think there was a bigger disparity in the striking, with Royval having a more polished game. And as far as knowns, Royval has been known to have a crazy gas tank, and Taira never really has been pushed that far. So I also don't think he's ever had a 5-round fight. This would be his first. All that said, the fight played out quite like you would expect, where Brandon was trying to impose a lot of his boxing and doing fairly well, whereas Taira was trying to bring the fight to the ground. The first round, nothing too major, although I felt Brandon won the first round, but not like any knockdowns or anything super big really happening. Second round is where things got interesting. Taira was able to secure a quick takedown, get right to the back, body triangle, and just keep Brandon on his back the whole time. Now, he didn't really seem to go heavy on the chokes, right? Which would be a critique of mine. If you're playing a grappling game plan against a guy who's a heavy striker with a crazy gas tank, then you really need to press the advantage when you have it. And when you're able to secure a body triangle within the first 30 seconds of the match, in a round, you really need to get a finish, right? Don't gas out right away, but at the same time, you do have to press and really crank those chokes. He seemed more focused on just keeping control and holding, didn't do a lot of physical damage. So again, strategically, it seemed odd. When they moved to the third round, Brandon once again pushed hard and made a mistake again, which is that he scored a big knockdown, and because he was lighting him up, just teeing off on him, and at one point dropped him, and then tried to take this guy's back, and then went for an armbar. Very low control, right? He just went into it, lost position, and then ended up being on his back. And then Tatsuya got his back again. And it was like, man, what a reversal. Now, it wasn't enough, obviously, to lose a round, but he made a bad strategic call, which is every time he got on the ground with Taira, it was a nightmare for Brandon. So it's like, why would you willingly go there? Just especially since you rocked him on his feet, because he was hitting him like a T-ball pretty much. It was just at will. And clearly he was rocked. And I don't think Taira was tired from lack of cardio. It's just that when you get your head rocked in, you are going to experience fatigue, right? It's just what comes with it. So he should have really kept it on his feet and just try to knock him out standing, because the ground was clearly Taira's domain. They go into the fourth round, and once again, Taira takes him down really quickly, gets to the back, and now it's looking really bad for Brandon. the weird part again, now, between rounds, Tyra looked like he recovered very well. Like I said, I don't think it was like he didn't have the gas tank. It's just that he took so much damage to his head that you're going to experience what looks like fatigue. So when you went into the fourth round, it looked pretty good. And once again, floored Brandon the entire time, for most of the round, I believe. I think Brandon got out towards the end. But he had, at one point, body triangle, arm trapped under the body triangle, only one hand defending. And Tatsuya had the bottom arm threaded in, but he was still working on wrist control. And I'm like, what are you waiting for? Whenever you get this arm pinned on the choking side, that's a game over. You just choke. Even if you don't got a clean choke, face crank, something. He never really went for it. Like, he kept fiddling, trying to get some type of perfect grip, which made zero sense to me, right? Like, at least from everybody I've seen that's a great choker, you get that arm trapped, it's a wrap. And mind you, Tatsuya's control of the body triangle is phenomenal, right? Like, Brendan was rolling around everywhere trying to escape, and he was glued to his back. So he's a much better controller of the back than I am. But regarding choking, it's like he barely went for it. And like, when you have that arm trapped in the body triangle, so basically he's defending with one hand, especially when you have the choke working on this side, this is a weak pull here, right? Like, if you're trying to choke on this side, yeah, this hand could be a game stopper. But when you're choking on the far side, this hand's useless. I could have my hand fully in there and it's not going to do anything. You'll still choke me, right? So, puzzling decision there by Tyra. I don't know if maybe he was rocked and just couldn't think straight, but like, there should have been just choke. Even if you don't have a clean choke, you got the arm trapped. You gotta freaking rip it, you know? And he never really ripped it. Like, you never see a moment where he starts trying to put the squeeze in. And now I say rip it, but if you guys see me talk about chokes, obviously you don't rip chokes. You kind of ease into the pressure like anaconda. But he never did that, right? He never went into the choking phase, right? He just kept like grip fighting. I don't know if he was expecting to get like a perfect arm under the throat. Like, that's not gonna happen. You know, not like it's a tough guy. You're gonna have to go chin first, and then through the chin pressure, he'll open up, and then you'll catch the neck, or even if you don't, you'll still finish. So I felt that he really dropped that ball in the fourth round. He still won the round by control, but goes into the fifth round, and now the great thing that the coaches told Brandon was, don't give up your back. If you get taken down, go to your guard, you'll work off your guard. Sage advice. Because sure enough, he did get taken. He did some good damage from his feet again, enough in my opinion to win the striking battle from the feet. Got taken down, went to his guard, and was able to work his way back up to his feet. And at one point, he actually reversed and was able to get on top of Tatsuya, and then did the smart thing, which was he backed away. So although he made a terrible strategic blunder in the third, he adjusted, listened to the coach's advice, and was able not to repeat those mistakes. That's great, right? So I liked that he listened to the coaching and was able to make the adjustment. It looked like he wanted to stay on top, if I'm being honest, but he believed in his coaches enough to follow their advice, because you hear him saying, stand up when you want to, back up when you want to. And then he said, oh, okay, and then he backed up. Because I know if you're a fighter, you probably think you can just fight everywhere, right? So if I got on top of a guy, or even if I was, like, he tried to jump the body triangle himself, but almost lost the position. I think he realized then, like, nah, there's too much to lose here, right? And he was able to back away and win the fight by a decision. Split decision, which was odd because one of the judges gave the first round to Tyra, which I thought was a pretty easy round to give to Brandon. But in either case, he ended up winning. So from a strategy standpoint, Tyra really needed to press the advantage on the choke. If he thought he was going to wear out Brandon by the domination on the ground, he obviously miscalculated greatly, which I would think you wouldn't, since apparently they trained with each other before. Not even that far, like 6 months ago, if I heard the commentary correctly. So you have to know, like, this guy's a freaking cardio machine, and even when he's put in really terrible spots, the guy just doesn't relent. Like, he's moving. So you're not going to beat him by cardio. You have to beat him by technique, right? So when you have the positions like the ground, back, body triangle, arm track, you really have to press and push for the finish there, because the guy can get saved by the bell, and then you're going to lose everything you worked for. So again, from that point, I felt like as a pure grappler going against a... Now, if he was fighting a guy that wasn't renowned for cardio and perhaps could be broken, then yeah, I can just work back control the whole time, and then I know going into the next round he's going to fade because he got so stressed on that bottom position. But Brendan's clearly not that guy. He's not going to break. He's not going to fatigue. So you need to finish the match. On Brendan's side, obviously, mistake there of trying to pursue the ground game on a wounded opponent. You hurt him on the feet, keep him on the feet, right? This guy wasn't really offering that much resistance on the feet. He landed some shots that looked like, they were clean, but I don't think he's a clean enough striker to hurt Brandon. So, like, even as a wounded lion, I would rather that guy on his feet than on the ground, because even wounded on the ground, he was flowing smoothly and taking the back. So you can't play with a dangerous grappler on the ground if you're not at that level. And even though he's a good grappler, you have to be able to recognize, where is my greatest advantage, right? Is it on the feet or on the ground? Because if it's on the feet, the fight should be on the feet the entire time. There's no reason to engage in the ground, right? So that would be my advice there. But like I said, he did adjust between the rounds, 4th and 5th, and learned the mistake and overcame it. So kudos to him on that. That's not easy to do, right? It can be tough. So that shows me he listens and he trusts his coach, which is probably why he's doing so well. So congrats on that win. On the other side of things, later or earlier in the card, I should say, there was Jared Gooden and Chidi. I can't say that name. I know they call him Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is a fight name, right? So Chidi was a tall, long striker, explosive, fast, solid build, right? Like, and plays the part. Gooden came in looking more like the grappler, and the idea seemed to be to work the fight to the ground. And this is another one where I don't understand where the strategy went. Chidi seemed like he wanted to strike from a distance, but Gooden was good at closing the distance and getting to the clinch. What he was not good at was securing a takedown. He would just get into the clinch, put Chidi on the fence, and just hold him there. And Chidi, not wanting to be held on the fence, would turn him almost immediately and then keep Gooden on the fence the entire round. And he pretty much did this for the first 2 rounds. So it was surprising to me, because not only did he hold him on the fence as a striker, but he was kneeing his body and getting short, tight elbows continuously. And Gooden didn't really seem to do anything about it. He kind of left himself stay there. And it's funny because I think Dominic Cruz, one of the commentators, had the right assessment, because Michael Bisping is like, he's got to work out of there. He's losing the fight here. He's getting hurt. It's like, yes, that's all true. But Dominic noticed, like, it looks like Gooden wants to be here because hasn't made one move to escape this position, right? And his opinion, which I think he's probably right, which is that he recognized that Chidi was a lot more dangerous at distance with his kicks and all the different weapons that he has from striking. So at least from this clinch, he knows really he just has to watch for knees and elbows. And he was obviously absorbing it pretty well. Although, I mean, honestly, he took so many knees to the body and a lot of elbows to the brows. Guy's not cuttable, man, because he got hit with so many elbows and like nothing really happened. And durable body, because he was getting pelted with knees. But either way, where was the strategy to win? Because he really, I think he scored a couple of takedowns, but he wasn't able to keep him down. Chidi was very good at getting back up to his feet, and then it was kind of like everything was wasted. So this is another one where it feels like the strategy wasn't really well fleshed out. Like if it was just to clinch and then try to secure a takedown, you have to work harder for those takedowns. You know, he would just get over under and easily turn. And again, if you're the guy doing the takedowns, you can't have your back on the fence. Pretty hard to do takedowns when you're slumped into the fence, right? You have to be the guy on the outside so you can, you know, yank the legs or do inside trips, you know, or try to work towards the back. You know, you can't be the one with your back on the fence. So again, really confusing on, you know, what he was expecting to do. It feels to me like Cruz is probably right in that this guy probably just wanted to survive, you know, and he went into survival mode like almost in round one, which is kind of crazy to me, right? Like, for me, I always trying to win, right? I don't care about surviving if surviving means losing, right? I need to win the contest. I need to do everything I can to win. Strange, right? Again, it's a fight that I watched. I'm like, man, I don't understand how he ever thought he was going to win. You know, and yeah, those are the two. I mean, there were a few other fights, but I don't want to, you know, repeat myself here. But regarding strategy, it seems like some of these guys didn't really, you know, figure out the path to victory, right? Or they left a lot to be desired as far as the planning, you know? It's kind of like that South Park with the gnomes, where they hit the underwear gnomes, where step one, collect underwear, step two is blank, step three is profit, you know? It's like, you know, step one, clinch, step three, win. What was step two? You know, like you guys didn't put everything together. I feel like if you're trying to win fights, especially, you know, big fights like this where you're a main event, your game plans have to be very well fleshed out. There should be nothing left to chance. And seeing what to me appears like gaps in the game plan, where it's like, I guess he maybe couldn't expect at the moment he got a buy lock, the takedown was going to happen automatically, and then didn't consider what to do if he got stuck. You know, it's like you should have had like 100 things to work on, right? So this is not to dunk on anybody. You know, fighting's tough, right? But at the same time, I feel like this is like the tough talk. You know, like if they did work on stuff in camp and he didn't do it, then that's another issue, right? Like you didn't execute the game plan, you might have gotten, you know, stuck and just weren't thinking, you weren't following the plan, you weren't listening to coaches. They didn't really share what the coaches were saying on this corner, so harder for me to assess that, you know. But it definitely feels like there was an error in the training. Something didn't go right, you know. And regarding with Tetsuya, I felt like you really need to go for those chokes, right? You got a back body triangle early in a round, you should be finishing that if you're like the expert grappler. And the other critique I didn't mention there, he said he did very little ground and pound on top. And this is another mistake if you're, again, expert grappler and you're having a tough time getting chokes, you need to loosen the guy up and start throwing hands. Because that's what makes grappling easier, is when you can distract them with something else. You know, it's kind of like those guys who, you know, when you mount them and they kind of do this thing where they try to protect their arms and they have them low in the chest, so it's hard to, you know, secure an arm bar or isolate an arm, you know, and they're keeping their frames low. It's like, yeah, this works maybe in the sport grappling situation, but if we're doing MMA, I start punching in your face and you're gonna get knocked out. So you're gonna have to come up and now I can start isolating arms, right? So like, when you can strike, it's a great tool for grappling because you're gonna open things up a lot easier. But if you never present the threat, then your opponent can relax and just focus purely on grappling defense and kind of nullify and make your offense a lot more difficult. So I felt like that was a mistake there as well, as far as never throwing any striking pressure, ground and pound pressure, especially since he wasn't really going for chokes. He was just looking, it kind of looked like he was just going for control. So yeah, I felt like if Tatsuya was a little more clever there, he would have got the win in that match, round 2 or in round 4. But he dropped the ball in those opportunities and cost him the match, and unfortunately his undefeated record. But you can always learn, even and take that one that and become a better fighter for it. But those are my thoughts, anyways. Hopefully those serve you right. As far as the strategy, it's an important aspect of fighting, because if we're looking technically, Tyro is way better on the ground than Brandon. But because he was implementing poor strategy, he wasn't able to leverage that. Right? So even with all the best techniques, you can watch all the great videos, you can see stuff that I've been posting, but if you're using poor strategy, you're not going to get good results. Right? Strategy trumps everything else. Right? Even being super fast, super strong, if you don't have a good strategy to exploit those advantages that you have, it's worthless.